Welcome back to the Den of Nerds. I am Josh, and we just got some massive updates about the plan for RDJ's Doctor Doom. Several insiders have come forward to explain what the original plan was for Jonathan Majors' Kang, what the original plan was for RDJ's Doctor Doom, and it does seem like that was a very old plan, separate from Kang. And based on what these insiders are saying now, we can determine that there absolutely was a plan for Doctor Doom. There was a plan for Kang, and we now know how that plan changed over time. So this really has to do with two main scoopers out there, Daniel RPK and Alex Perez. And it all started several days ago when Daniel RPK started tweeting about the Kang dynasty. And basically his attitude was, I would have loved to see what the Kang dynasty would have been like. Seems like he's really unhappy that they went away from Kang. And the thing is, Daniel's not alone in this. A lot of people are frustrated with the pivot into Kang, mostly because they view it as this total last minute change. They went completely away from their plan. And so by Daniel talking about this, he sort of opened the floodgates of people to come in and comment on what was going on. And a lot of people were commenting to Daniel that they believed that Doctor Doom was always the plan. And believe it or not, there are reasons that fans believe this. There's actually evidence that Marvel was always going to do Doctor Doom. And we're going to get more into that within this video because the scoopers are kind of agreeing with that. They're saying it's way different than what we thought was going on, but they are essentially saying there was a plan for Doctor Doom. And I will take a moment here just to remind you of two things. Number one, the Russo Brothers recently said that the plan for RDJ Doctor Doom came from Kevin Feige, and that plan was at least 2 years old, which would predate when Jonathan Majors got in trouble. And then I'd also like to bring up a report that I bring up all the time. It was on the Hot Mic podcast where Jeff Snyder said in the middle of all the craziness going on with Jonathan Majors that he had heard from one of his best sources ever that Doctor Doom was always the villain of Secret Wars. And so that combined with the Russos recently coming out to say that the Doctor Doom RDJ thing was in the works for 2+ years. I mean, that's the reason why fans believe that Doctor Doom was always the plan. So let's keep going here because other insiders saw Daniel talking about this. They chimed in. Suddenly Alex Perez enters and he starts talking about this. Now what Alex says here is that the Kang dynasty would have had separate Avengers teams divided as they took on Immortus, Centurion, and Rama Tut. The Conqueror, who is the main Kang from Quantumania, he would have returned in the third act from quote-unquote the Beyond to take his revenge against the variants and become the new He Who Remains. Now, that lines up with a lot of other stuff we've heard about in the past, rumors that were even reported by Daniel RPK himself. And I think it's kind of obvious if you look at the post-credit scene for the Kang dynasty, which obviously came out before Jonathan Majors got in trouble, before the whole freaking plan changed. And the post-credit scene does have those main 3 Kang variants, right? Immortus, Centurion, and Rama Tut. So I absolutely believe that the original version of the Kang dynasty would have seen the 616 Avengers fight, possibly even across time, against Immortus, Centurion, and Rama Tut. And then the friggin' Kang the Conqueror guy that got sucked into that weird crystal at the end of Quantumania, he was going to return from the Beyond, take his revenge, create Battle World, and be the new He Who Remains. So fans were like, okay, we get it. So you're saying this was Kang dynasty, but Alex, Daniel, are you guys really suggesting that Secret Wars, which would have been separate from Kang Dynasty, are you really saying that that movie would have not had Doctor Doom? And of course, the question's like, then why did Jeff Snyder say that Doctor Doom was always the villain of Secret Wars? And why is the plan for RDJ as Doctor Doom 2 years old, older than the release of Quantumania and Jonathan Majors getting in trouble? And the answer is fascinating. It says here, the idea was to leave Doom out of it because He Who Remains and his variants all agreed on keeping Doom and others out of the picture in order to ensure they would thrive. And when they'd lose, Doom would have been teased as the evil they were trying to keep at bay. But don't you see, that actually confirms that Doom would have been involved in Secret Wars. Think about it. We have heard forever that the X-Men were going to be a part of Secret Wars. And that's partially because one of the reasons you even do Secret Wars is to have the X-Men and the Avengers and all of the Fox characters and the Sony characters and the Marvel characters. You want all those characters together. So that was always the promise. So you're telling me that Alex is sitting here telling us that the plot would have revolved around how Doom and others, which is obviously the X-Men, would have been taken out of the picture so that the Kangs would have thrived. And yet we know for sure that the mutants, one of the things taken out of the picture by by He Who Remains would have been a huge part of Secret Wars, but you're trying to tell me Doctor Doom would not have been? And in fact, by all accounts, what Alex is admitting here is that Doom would have been the real big bad. He would have been the true evil that the Kangs were trying to prevent within the multiverse. And that connects to the whole scoop from Jeff Snyder about how Doom was always the plan. But I am getting a little bit ahead of myself. There's more to break down here. So what Alex says next is now you're getting the aftermath of what would have been basically the next saga, but with Doom at the forefront instead of Kang mixed in with a couple of ideas from the previous scripts. Okay, so let's try to break this down as simply as possible. In the original version of Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, it seems like you would have had the Kang variants taking over, fighting against the heroes of 616 throughout time in Avengers the Kang Dynasty. Beyonder Kang would have come back, killed all of his variants, and probably just remade the timeline. Remember, he does not agree with the rest of the Council of Kang. And then we would have went into Secret Wars, and we would have had all the characters. Everything. We would have had Doom, we would have had X-Men, we would have had all the characters. Because remember, it was the original He Who Remains and the Council of Kangs that didn't want Doom and didn't want the mutants. The guy that didn't agree with them, he was going to become Beyonder. And so at that point, you would have had mutants, Doom, and a lot of other weird stuff in Secret Wars. And it's very likely that that would have built up Doctor Doom as this big, great, evil thing that maybe they should have kept behind closed doors. Like maybe He Who Remains actually had it right. And then that would have led into the mutant saga. Now, let's talk about that for a second, because that's kind of dope, man. Okay, so this is crazy. And that means that the change that Marvel Studios made was take the plot, which was likely going to be in Secret Wars and definitely in the next saga, and they've now fast-tracked that. So now that is actually going to be the focus of Doomsday. And so this whole idea of He Who Remains stripping Doom out of the universe, that was always a part of the plan. It was going to be a big deal for Doom. It is still a big deal for Doom. It's now just being explored in Avengers 5. And instead of setting up Doctor Doom as this really crazy evil threat that the Kangs were probably right in trying to prevent, now we're going to get Doctor Doom presented as a sympathetic villain, a guy who just wants to get back in the timeline and save the multiverse. And oh, you know what? Maybe just be God as well. You know, it's kind of cool to be God. So Doom is God, you know? We also seem to have this new idea with dark versions of the OG Avengers, evil versions of characters like Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and Tony Stark via the Victor Von Doom thing. And it seems like that's now a big part of the focus of Doomsday as well. And there's this X-Men element with the incursions, but that was likely also going to be in Kang Dynasty because it was being set up. So I gotta be honest here, guys. I'm looking at what the insiders are saying. I'm considering all the rumors and things that we've heard from the past, and I think Jeff Snyder was right. I think Doctor Doom was always going to be the villain of Secret Wars. It just depends on how you interpret that, because essentially Alex and Daniel both admit that Doctor Doom was the real evil that the Kangs were trying to prevent, and that idea would have been explored in Secret Wars, and yet somehow they don't believe that means that Doom was always in Secret Wars and that he was always the villain. And maybe there's some nuance there, but I could see how both things are true. And it really does seem like what Marvel really did was take threads that were going to be a part of Secret Wars and then explored in the Mutant Saga, and now they have remade these two movies, and they will focus on that character, and that'll be in the first movie, and then Secret Wars will explore Doom's reality. Okay, now there's one last thing I got to talk about in this video, and it's kind of wild here, because I think there's still a chance that you get Doctor Doom as a big threat in the next saga. I know that sounds crazy, especially with some of the stuff they're cooking with RDJ Doom. Like, we're all like, what? How could that even work? But big-time insiders have said that there might be a plan to keep RDJ as Doom past Secret Wars. And now that we have this info from Alex, we can kind of see why that would make sense. They were already going to do that. So now they can just set Doom up much better in these next two movies and then just keep him for the Mutant Saga. And on the business side of things, you might say there's no way they can afford Robert Downey Jr. for 10 more years or whatever the Mutant Saga is going to be. But I will just tell you this, as far as I understand it from people I've talked to in the industry, if these next two Avengers movies make over $2 billion and they're huge, huge successes, then it's actually the opposite of that. It's more like they can't afford not to use RDJ for 10 more years. Think about what has happened over the past 3 to 4 years without him. There's just no way around it. If these movies blow up, you're going to get Robert Downey Jr. Doom for like 10 more years. That's what I really think is happening. By the way, I totally want that. Anyway, there's definitely my opinion sprinkled in here too. I'm just trying to do my best as far as reporting it all to you, making sense of it. But I honestly do think I have a pretty good angle on this. I think I understand what's going on. Let me know what you think about everything I've reported here. Do you disagree with me? Do you think there's a different take? Let me know. And as I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.